Flavors of Life is a book that delves into the stories behind some of the best restaurants in Amsterdam. Written by Jessica Lipowski, Flavors of Life is a window into the lives of 67 people who found themselves far away from home and decided to share their cuisine with the people of Amsterdam. Now Jessica is going to share her own story about bringing this book to life. The e-book version of Flavors of Life is available to download on our website. See the Summit schedule page for a free download. Jessica Lipowski is originally from Detroit, Michigan, and is a graduate of Michigan State University. But in February 2011, she moved to the Netherlands. With previous journalistic work published on 10best.com, which is a part of USA Today, and in the Washington Times, she is now an author. The book Flavors of Life, in combination with Jessica's past work experience, travels, and life as an expat, has enabled her to view food, travel, and culture through a completely different lens. Jessica, it is so lovely to have you here today, and I'm so excited to welcome you to the summit and to share your book, Flavors of Life, with our audience. And I'm just so excited to learn more about your process in making this book and some of your advice on eating abroad.
Well, thank you so much for having me. I'm really excited to be here and tell you a little bit about my book, Flavors of Life. While we're here, if as you're listening, if anyone has any questions at all, please feel free to type them in the comments, and Claire and I will be happy to answer them as we're going through. I'd love to hear from our listeners as well.
Absolutely. Yes, we are. Please don't be shy. Please send in your questions. We'll be happy to answer. Wonderful. So 42 restaurants, 62 stories, and 41 nationalities spanning the whole world. This book is just amazing. And I'm curious to hear, how long did it take to curate this book?
Yeah, it was 2.5 years from start to finish. So this book goes back to August 2012. I was sitting at a Mexican restaurant, and across the street was a Caribbean restaurant. And I look at and I'm thinking, what is a Caribbean restaurant doing in Amsterdam? So you look down the street, and there's French and Italian and Thai and Indonesian and all these different restaurants. You're going, what is the story here? Amsterdam is home to 180 nationalities from around the world. That got me thinking that I knew why I moved overseas, but what about all these other people from around the world? How and why did they choose the Dutch capital to be their home? On top of that, looking back to this Caribbean restaurant, we always read about the food, the quality of the food, the service, the atmosphere, but we never learn about the people that actually started the restaurant. Food brings us together. It crosses cultures. So taking all of that into consideration, Amsterdam's diversity, the food, I decided to look at the stories of international restaurant owners that are based in Amsterdam. So in October 2013, after researching and outlining the concept over the summer, I decided to move forward and work on this book full time. I spent about a month deciding which restaurants to interview, because Amsterdam is actually home to 3,000 restaurants, give or take, and looked at a variety of factors. I conducted interviews in person with all of the restaurant owners, taking time to get to know them and their story. I recorded all the interviews, transcribed the files, and used those notes as a foundation to write the book. The interview and transcription process actually lasted about 7 months. Then I did the writing, followed by the first round of edits. I met with all my owners one more time to collect photographs and go through the first draft of their story. And once all those materials were in order, I started designing the book and working with my second and third editors to make sure that my work was succinct, clear, polished, and good to go. Once all that feedback was in place, I met with my owners again for the final time to show them the product And of course, working with the legal team and the printer to decide on the paper type, make sure everything was really top notch. I worked really long days. If I wasn't out with one of my restaurant owners, I was at home writing or editing, designing, doing something else book related, building my author platform. So it was truly a labor of love.
Absolutely. It sounds like it. Wow. Wow. That's wonderful. I'm really curious. You mentioned in the beginning that the book was inspired by, trying to figure out the stories behind a lot of these places, and why is there a Caribbean restaurant in the middle of Amsterdam? But I'm wondering, like, what was the main idea behind writing the book? Was it to, create some kind of travel guide for writers to find the tastiest places to eat, or was it more of an ethnography of the restaurant owners?
So the actual purpose of this book, I think, was to show that at the core, we're all the same. We all have the same desires, hopes. We want to be happy. We want to be loved. We want to make a difference in the world. And that's regardless of background, race, ethnicity, culture, religion. I think we share a lot of the same values and share a lot of common ground. Of course, this book can be used as a travel guide to find tasty food, and it should be. It does showcase local restaurant culture. It really does tie all this together, but my main goal was to show that we are all tied together by a common thread.
Nice, wonderful. Yeah, I mean, it's something that really goes to show how an important a role food has when traveling as well. When you travel around the world and you try that local food, all of a sudden you're more connected to that place than if you had stayed in your hotel room and eaten the granola or whatever they had available for you at the hotel. I've always felt that food is that deeper connection to having a truly authentic experience.
Yeah. Well, and on top of that, I mean, even looking at this book, so all of these people ended up in the same industry in the same city with this shared passion. And this is the business that these entrepreneurs know and love. They have dedicated their lives. And I don't think many people know what it takes to run a restaurant. It seems like fun and oh yeah, they get to be around food all the time. Well, it really is. The hours are long. They've made so many sacrifices. Family and family lovers is another important theme at the center of this book. So they share meals together, spend time together. It's really showing that a lot of these entrepreneurs feel like global citizens, and that all these common values do cross boundaries, or borders, I should say. They do cross borders.
Wow, that's wonderful. And
yeah, and it really showcases a little bit of that restaurant life. So when you're eating a meal and sitting there, like you talked about, having that authentic experience, this book just sheds a little extra light to make that experience even more authentic.
Yes, absolutely. I agree. And I mean, learning the story behind how they got there and that food and, and that recipe came from his or her mother, I mean, stuff like that. It just made it so much more special.
Yes.
Wonderful. And I mean, we're talking about how every story is wonderful and unique in this book. I'm curious if there were some stories that really stood out, were really fun to learn about or humbling.
Indeed. All of the stories are truly inspiring in their own way, but I do want to mention two in particular. One is Himalayan Kitchen. It's about a man from the mountains of Nepal. Every day he walked 2 hours each way to go to school. Wow. He did not have shoes or a jacket, and his house had no electricity. Through hard work and dedication, he made his way to Amsterdam for a better future and now owns a restaurant.
Wow.
So, the owner of Obalada Suya, he is from Nigeria. He fled as a religious refugee and against all odds now runs an eatery and catering business in Amsterdam. He also serves as a mentor to others from abroad. He's truly, truly a role model. illustrating that honest, hard work can pay off.
Wow, that's incredible. And you know, you mentioned that you moved, from Detroit, right?
Yeah.
That area to Holland, and I'm wondering if you had some similarities with some of these, individuals who found themselves also in Amsterdam, and if that helped you connect even further with some of these individuals.
Absolutely. Maybe my story is not as extreme or facing as much adversity of the two that I just mentioned, but I definitely would be listening to a story and all of a sudden find myself saying, oh, yes, I completely understand. I experienced the same thing. I experienced many of the same struggles, like learning the language, making friends, and coping with the fact that my family is 4,000 miles away. Um, but even in the stories that did where they faced even more adversity than I did, I could still find common ground. We all moved to this beautiful, open-minded city and had to adjust to the Dutch culture.
I'm also curious to learn, uh, were you able to kind of relate to any of these stories? I mean, I feel on the broader scope, perhaps, you moved to Holland. A lot of these people, found homes in Amsterdam as well. But were there stories that you really, really connected to?
Yeah, absolutely. I would be listening to a story, and all of a sudden, I'd find myself saying, I completely understand. I experienced the same thing, faced many of the same struggles, like learning the language, making friends, coping with the fact that my family is 4,000 miles away. Many people in the book faced much more adversity, but even in those stories, I could find common ground. We all moved to this beautiful, open-minded city and had to adjust to the Dutch culture. Um, I mean, there's one in particular that I could directly relate to because a lot of people were moving abroad in search of a new adventure, and that's exactly why I moved to Amsterdam as well. So Anna from A Piece of Finland, she's a co-owner, said she didn't leave Finland because she wanted out, but because the rest of the world was calling her in, it was drawing her in. And that's how I felt about moving to the Netherlands. It wasn't that I needed or wanted to leave the United States or my family, but I felt this urge, this desire to see the world and experience new cultures and have the opportunity to live abroad for a part of my life.
So now, after completing this book and living in Holland for so long, how familiar are you with Amsterdam?
I like to believe that I'm an authority on Amsterdam in the most humble way. Um, when I first moved to Amsterdam in February 2011, I worked for an online platform that connects group travel and event planners with hotels. So that was my first exposure to the travel industry. Then I was writing about Amsterdam for USA Today, and then working on my book. So I've really seen Amsterdam from a lot of different angles, um, knowing everything from hotels, places to eat, uh, how to get around, and then just having lived there for 6 years and the ins and outs. I really do believe that I know Amsterdam quite well. But just like life, you learn something new every day, and there's always something to explore. Um, that
Absolutely, a fact of life, right? I mean, you always find new things in your own backyard,
yeah,
and yeah, that's always one way to. I always felt one way to start traveling is you don't have to jet across the world. You could start in your own community and see if you can find something new and exciting and talk to someone new, and you wind up broadening the world around you. I feel. Yeah,
definitely, definitely.
wonderful. So I wonder if this book has changed the way that you look at travel and look at food.
It absolutely has. I mean, I've been very fortunate to be traveling almost my whole life. Um, I've been extremely fortunate. Um, but it's definitely living overseas has definitely changed my travel style. It's changed the way I view things. I view life through a different lens now. that I've lived overseas. And then I've had these interactions with 62 different people from around the world. And on top of that, just even living in a foreign city, my friends and connections. I've always loved food. I've loved trying local products. But then this book has opened my eyes to even more new and diverse cuisine. So before I had never tried Afghan food. Well, now through this book, Restaurant Mantu, I have tried Afghan food and I love it. The spices, the different meats. It's wonderful, and I would have never tried that before, most likely. On top of that, you're learning about new cities, new areas that maybe I hadn't thought about before. So one of the owners is from Bali, or lived in Bali for a long time, and I've been dreaming of Bali for the last 3 years.
Yes, understandably.
Yeah, I wanted to see new places in the world, and or even learning about different destinations from a local perspective that you may not have otherwise heard. So I've been very fortunate to be exposed.
Absolutely wonderful. Absolutely. Now that you've gone through the writing process and you've learned so much more about the trials and tribulations of making a book, do you have plans in the works to write another book?
That's a very good question. Depending on how everything pans out, I am potentially interested in publishing another book. I have a few ideas in mind, but would like to develop them a bit further before commenting on them publicly. Regardless, though, writing will continue to be a part of my life. It's part of who I am.
Wonderful, wonderful. Do you have any other advice or anything to add for our viewers, especially maybe when it comes to looking at food in a new way, in a different way, a way to describe cultures and communities?
Definitely. I think you touched on it a little bit, Claire, that you can explore your backyard. You don't have to travel 5,000 miles to get a new experience. You can explore your own backyard and really take the time to talk with people. Everyone has a story to share. Everyone has something that they can teach us, and we can learn from everyone around us. And I think sometimes we take our surroundings for granted. So yeah, it's just being open to that new experience and being open and willing to learn about different or new perspectives that we may not otherwise receive. We can have authentic experiences wherever we go if you're willing.
Nice. So true. So true. Well, thank you so much for being here. I am so excited that your book is available to download for those who are attending the summit. It's the ebook version, so there aren't any photographs in the middle. But if you do want this beautiful coffee book version, there will be some in our Kickstarter campaign. And so there'll be a chance to get a copy there as well. And you can always order on Amazon and yeah, grab one of these beautiful books for yourself. Again, Jessica, thank you so much for being here.
Thank you so much, Claire, for having me. It's been a real pleasure to share a little bit of my experiences and the stories that are, and a few of the stories that are in this book. It's been absolutely humbling to share just a portion of the stories that are out in this world. So thank you for having me.
Thank you. Wonderful.